Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of How to Get an Engineering Co-op. Stop applying for co-ops until you do this first. Are you someone who's applied for a boatload of co-ops but you haven't heard anything back? Well, this podcast covers the things that you should consider doing before you start applying for all your co-ops. You might be thinking, why should I stop applying? I thought I was supposed to apply to as many co-ops as I could. Well, that's true, but before you do, there are a few things you want to make sure that you do. And that's what we're going to talk about on this podcast. So before you prepare any materials, it can be very helpful to ask yourself, what kind of engineer do I want to be? We can help to clarify that question by answering other questions, such as, what kind of company do you want to work at? Is it large, medium, small company? Is it close to where you live right now? Or would you have to relocate to get there? Do you want to move once you graduate? What kind of location do you want to live in? Would you prefer a rural area or an urban area? So these are the things that you should be asking yourself, and I really encourage you to write these things down. Writing it down can be more helpful than just thinking about it. Although if you're not going to write it down, at least give yourself some time to think about the answers to these questions. Some other questions are, what do you look like working at your dream job? Are you sitting at a desk most of the day? Are you out on the floor or out in the field, perhaps working outside? Or is it a mixture of both? Do you travel a lot, or do you just work out of the same office? These are some really good questions to ask yourself. In future episodes, we'll discuss ways to help you answer some of these questions if you don't know the answers. So once you get an idea of what your job looks like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the exact job that you want in the future. But let's just start to learn about ourselves and figure out more of what we want in the future. Another question is, what are your dream companies? In the last podcast, I had you identify at least 5 companies where you would like to work. Now I'm asking you, identify at least 20 companies and do some research on these companies. One idea I'd like to share is when students look for jobs online, a lot of times they tend to just type in engineering co-op, Houston, Texas, for example. And whatever pops up, those are the jobs they think are available. Now, of course, those are some of the jobs available, but there are likely other places to look, and we'll cover that in future episodes as well. But my point here is, rather than asking the internet what your options are, it's helpful to identify the companies where you want to work first and go from there to find and identify your co-ops. For example, if you want to work for a manufacturing company that is a few miles from your house, and you look up co-ops at that position, and you don't find any, then you think, well, I'm out of luck. I'm not going to be able to work for that company. Well, that's not necessarily true. That company might only hire co-ops in the fall, or perhaps they hire co-ops in the spring for the following spring. So it all depends when you're looking and what you're looking at. The main idea here is to identify those companies and start building your own future, the future that you want, rather than just leaving it to chance and applying to whatever comes up online. If you can see here, what we're trying to do is build our own career search strategy and answering these questions: where you want to work, what kinds of things you want to be doing at work. Those are helping you build that strategy. They're a guide for what types of jobs and co-ops that you begin looking for and where you begin looking for them at. And the most important thing, in my opinion, before you begin applying to co-ops is to spend time on your resume. This is something that I think many engineering students want to spend as little time as possible on. And if you do that and fire it out to many companies, it may have been a waste of your time. So 2 important pieces of spending time on your resume are having a base resume. First, I would start with a base resume. And for this resume, it can be as long as you want it to be, because this is going to be the collection place for all of your experiences and information. So you want to have things on there like all the jobs that you have ever had, whether or not you believe that they pertain to engineering, all of your volunteer experience, awards, honors that you've received, all of the projects that you've worked on, and any skills that you have. Keep using that base resume and adding more skills, more projects, more jobs as you get them. That is where you can pull ideas from when you work on the next important part of your resume, which is tailoring your resume to the job posting. Now, what does that mean? It does not mean putting all the wording on your resume from the job posting if it doesn't pertain to you. You want your resume to reflect your true nature, who you really are. So what you want to do before you apply to a job is take the resume that you have, compare it with the job posting. This is when the fine art of tailoring happens. So you begin to mold your resume in a way that more closely aligns with the job posting. Of course, you want to be honest in this, but there are many ways to change the wording on things that would better align with the posting. So I have a story. I worked with 2 different students. One student applied to over 100 jobs within a few months, and he received 0 offers from those over 100 applications he sent out. I worked with a different student who only applied to 3 companies, and he got an offer from one of those companies. Now, what was the difference? The first student didn't spend a lot of time on his resume, and because he didn't take the time to tailor each resume to each job posting, he did have more time to send out more applications. The second student spent hours on one job application. He took the time to look over the job posting and go line by line and make sure that he could find those topics and skills within his resume. He worked for hours to closely align his resume with the job posting. They both may have spent the same amount of time applying, but the second student spent most of his time aligning his resume with the posting and tailoring his resume, whereas the first student was playing a numbers game, thinking if he applied to over 100 jobs, he'd surely get one. So these are the items I highly recommend you cover before you go out and start applying to all the co-ops. Ask yourself, what kind of company do you want to work for? And answer the details as well. Where do you want to live? What kind of area do you want to live in? What kind of job do you want to be doing? Then figure out around 20 companies that you would really love to work for. And do a little research on these companies. Figure out what kind of work they do, what kind of work you'd be doing there, and so on. And last and most important is getting a good resume to begin with and tailoring that resume specifically to each job posting rather than sending out a general resume to many companies. If you're a student who's been applying, I'd love to hear from you and what kind of experiences you've had. Are you getting interviews? How many resumes have you sent out? Do you tailor your resume before you submit it? You can send me your story at brandy@deltaxcoop.com. I will put that email address in the description of this podcast. Thanks so much for listening to How to Get an Engineering Co-op. If you have found this useful, please subscribe so you can stay up to date for future podcasts. And until next time, you've got this.